Hello everyone, welcome back to another review on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and of course with me is Milly.
Hi.
We have Dan
Hi.
and we have Sophie.
Hey.
So today we are going to be reviewing the Scoob movie, which we have reviewed once before, but it was a while ago. And that time we were interrupted by a spider. So hopefully this one will be a little bit calmer than that. But I mean, who can tell on the JB and Millie channel? We might be interrupted by two spiders this time. So
Let's hope
yeah,
not.
yeah, who knows? So this is going to be part of our December reviews, which will of course feature a special announcement at the end. So do stick around for that. Millie, tell me,
Tell you.
tell me,
Okay.
tell the audience what are we doing? What are we kicking off with?
So I guess let's start by getting into the plot a little bit because I think maybe once we meet the entire gang, we can then maybe discuss animation a little bit more and that sort of thing once we get the full overview. But I guess kind of just starting off with the story, it's, quite clearly, I want to say an origin story of the gang. We see how they meet, all the build up to that. So we start off at Venice Beach. Scooby's there stealing a kebab, I think, where he bumps into Shaggy. You get a very kind of blatant Shaggy's a very lonely character at this point. They made that abundantly clear and couldn't have spelt that out any clearer after repeating it 5 times. They certainly didn't leave much to the imagination in terms of how Shaggy was feeling before this point. So we're left with this scene where it sets up their friendship. Shaggy's trying to make friends with two piles of sand, and Scooby's sat behind one of them. And of course, them and them bond over food. So I'm not entirely mad with the story. I don't mind it. I think it's sweet. It's set up well. I know I said we were kind of leaving this till we got the entire gang, but I just think how Scooby is voiced in this movie makes him really adorable. I think it sounds quite sweet. I think they did it well, certainly for the younger iteration of Scooby, which makes me more excited about what, Holiday Haunt would have been, but we'll kind of move on to that. But JB, what's your kind of initial thoughts on how they build this world, how they build this story of Shaggy and Scooby in the intro?
Well, I think straight off the bat, I get the impression, or I got the impression, whatever the case may be, that this wasn't a movie made with me in mind necessarily, or my demographic. And that's okay, because I remember, watching the 2002 movie for the first time, and that was like early 2000s, like the embodiment of early 2000s. So I knew in the back of my mind that was my era. We're never really gonna get to that. And so when this started off with, like a modern day hip hop track, and we had a lot of like nods towards like modern day technology and stuff like that, I was like, fine, this is awesome. If this is gonna be how a new generation is introduced to these characters, it makes sense to have it be an origin story because a lot of times with casual people, unless they're following Scooby, they are just looking out for those cinematic releases. I know that around about the lockdown time when we were getting introduced to the franchise again or reintroduced to the franchise, it was literally I remember going into Morrison's, looking at the DVD aisle to look at something that we could watch during the lockdowns and stuff, and it was Return to Zombie Island and Scoob. And I was kind of like, oh wow, they're bringing Scooby Doo back after all this time. So yeah, I think it's a really good way to bridge that gap. But yeah, in terms of the subtlety of Shaggy's loneliness, it is non-existent. But again, I'm not a person with kids. I don't have a big extended family. I don't know how to gauge the intellect of children, but I'd imagine they're probably not as smart as more adult people.
I
So
just don't think
slapping them in the face with Shaggy, lonely. Okay, yeah, that's characterization, I guess.
I really don't think they needed to make as much of a point of it as they did, but I do also see what you're saying. I think you can watch this and see this as okay, they were trying to bring Scooby to the next generation. You could tell that this could be a starting point, I think,
Well,
for
it's an
anybody that
interesting
wasn't
one
familiar with the
because
franchise.
we've just finished reviewing an origin story in Mystery Begins, and when you compare the two, again, I'm thinking about early 2000s stuff like Spider-Man. I can relate to, oh, someone getting bullied on the bus. He must be a nerd like Peter Parker, or he must need friends. He must might need, it's always like shorthand stuff that
Mm.
I recognize. So it was a lot better done in maybe Mystery Begins, I think. But I mean, how would you do that now? I guess people still take the bus, but
This might sound
maybe a bit of
ageist,
a
but
rehash.
I think the way Mystery Begins did it was better for our generation. I think the way Scoob's done it is very much the upcoming generation that I see in my young niece and that sort of thing. So I can kind of see how it fits both ways. I don't know if it's relevant to mention, but I feel like this should probably be said at the start. We were actually really fortunate to see this in the cinema as well.
Yeah, even though we had to go to Blackpool to do it, and that is somewhere that people like. I don't like it, but you know what I mean. It was Scooby, right? So yeah,
We had to do
we had to do it.
it.
And a lot of our audience is American, so they're not going to be offended by that. But
I
yeah.
guess we've covered kind of a bit with what we're saying there, but I guess passing this over to Dan to try and cover what we just covered, if you can, in terms of, I don't know, first time you saw this, what you thought to how they kind of started this off building up Shaggy and Scooby's relationship.
Yeah, I remember when this came out very well because it was actually on my birthday in 2020. And I was so annoyed because obviously when all the trailers were coming out, I thought, oh, I'm going to the cinema on my birthday to see it, but
Oh,
and
yeah.
the cinema's closed, unfortunately. But I remember watching it. I watched it from home because my parents said, no, we're determined, we're gonna get this on for you. So we watched it. Um, yeah, I didn't mind the origin story. It's not my favorite. I know we discussed Mystery Begins the other week. That is probably my favorite. And I know it's not my least favorite though. My least favorite origin was I can't remember when it was, but when you see Shaggy in the pet shop and he just goes and buys Scooby, that never really sat well with me. But I thought it was cute. And I don't know who it was sort of aimed at because they still show Scooby all the time on the kids' channel. So I assume there must be that child audience there. It almost seems like the showing them as little kids was maybe for like was for our generation sort of like I remember being quite big on Twitter like oh baby Scooby, you know a bit like baby Yoda or baby Groot like you know like people who may not have who did watch Scooby back in the day but haven't for a while and this was sort of like oh we'll give them this cutesy sort of Scooby because I don't think they really played up the younger version of the gang I remember from the trailers for as little as they're in this film. But no, I liked it. I thought it was cute. I thought the voices were good. Yeah, so I liked it.
I certainly think playing up that younger kind of side of things is kind of really pushing towards what Holiday Horn could have been and trying to make you excited for
I
that.
mean, that puppy Scooby was the marketing essentially. Like,
Mm.
he's the most prominent guy on the poster. I know that people were going crazy for those like statues of puppy Scooby. It's like the marketing team knew what the draw was gonna be, but Warner Brothers were in like Goofy land, scratching their heads, wondering why people weren't like foaming at the mouth to hear Zac Efron as Fred.
I think Warner Brothers have always kind of fallen a little bit when it comes to putting the marketing with the product and like you said, just didn't get the message of what we were excited about or what we needed to be excited about and kind of how things transpired. So it was a bit of a shame. But Sophie, how do you feel about the origin story, Shaggy and Scooby meeting, and the first time do you remember the first time you saw the movie?
Well, I think it was the September the year, no, maybe the same year, I can't remember. So the first 10 minutes was released on YouTube already. So I'd watched that sequence over and over again. A couple of things. I love all the Easter eggs at the beginning, like all the callbacks to like the original show, Casey Kasem in that Shaggy scene. I do like a good origin story. I don't think it was my favourite. However, I will credit how unique it was. It's kind of like a goofy one, it wasn't just like an adoption story. I think, yeah, like Dan, I think Mystery Begins is probably my favourite origin story, but I do like the idea that the gang met as really little kids, like a pup named Scooby Doo. So I do like it, but I don't think it's my favourite one.
Oh, I think that's fair. I mean, one thing that I do think that even from the early parts of this movie, and you just mentioned there, that this film does is the little Easter eggs that's kind of hidden throughout. Like when Shaggy's going through this lonely montage, there's the Mystery Machine pattern on a wall in the background. You've got the Takamoto bowl, all that sort of thing. They say something else about, is it Casey Kasem? They say something, the Kasem something, I think they say.
Well, I don't know. There's like maybe there's that. There's Mesic
Meswick
Mountain.
Mountains, what I was thinking about, yeah. So I think that's something that they certainly kind of scatter throughout that I enjoy, that we at least get those little references. I think I don't know, I think they tried to, like we said, in terms of trying to work out who the target audience is, I think there certainly was some indication that it was designed for us, but also I do think bringing through that next generation of Scooby. And I think, like we're saying as well, the focus on the younger kind of version of the gang that continues. You see them, kind of the relationship build between Shaggy and Scooby. You made a kind of reference linking this to The Mystery Begins, didn't you?
Oh yeah, that like because you get them in literally the same position, not like doing the same stuff, but Shaggy and Scooby on the bed, kind of like meeting for the first time properly, is like the same thing that Nick Pilatus, Shaggy, and Scooby does. And that to me is like a real indication of multiverse stuff. Like there's parallels there. It's clearly some type of neighboring multiverse.
And one thing I will say though about this movie is it's not subtle. Like the clear references to Blue Falcon and Dynamite right from the start, they were not subtle about anything. It was like, okay, this is that they love them, and then they're gonna go on to meet them, sort of thing. So, and even then the fact that they then go as them for Trick or Treat, and the Halloween scene is where we meet the rest of the gang as well. So, I mean, in terms of kind of plot devices, I know you'd mentioned the bus for kind of bringing everyone together. How do you feel about what they do here with Shaggy and Scooby being bullied, the rest of the gang kind of swoop in, the Trick or Treat backdrop?
It's an interesting one. I mean, it's a little bit more like what I want. Well, not what I wanted, but what I speculated for Nick Pilatus Shaggy for it to make more sense that he was the new guy, and we kind of get that here. Like, do we even get any indication of if they go to the same school, ever went to the same school? I don't think we do, but I guess the point stands that they are new in that clearly pre-established group. I mean, Fred, I mean, he's a bit of a lad, isn't he, then, if his friendship group is two ladies? I think, you know what I mean? I think he's doing all right. He's Mr. Riz himself. But that's his friendship group. That's awesome. And they come in to save the day, which I think is awesome because it proves that maybe they were all still doing something, that there's maybe stories with those three similar to the stories that we see in like 13 Ghosts with Shaggy and Daphne. Maybe that was like a little group doing something. So yeah, I think it's cool.
And Sophie, how did you feel about this as the meeting of the gang?
Again, there's pros and cons. I like how, it's not a school setting, like it's just random, like, in general out in public. However, they've kind of made the divide with Fred, Daphne and Velma being in a group already, and then Shaggy and Scooby. I kind of like when all five come from different walks of life together. But I do admire that it's something different that hasn't been done before and isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind when you think of an origin story for the gang. So I do enjoy it.
I think, like you said, I do enjoy that it's a different dynamic. I think the one thing that I maybe don't enjoy so much is that Shaggy's kind of like the damsel in distress. He's getting bullied, and already he needs the gang more than they need him. But I don't know if that's just me being sensitive to certain things. Dan, how did you feel about how the gang meet?
Yeah, I thought it was cute. Like I said, I don't think this will ever be my favorite origin story, but just my favorite part of this film in general is the younger version of them. I liked it. I liked the fact that they're trick-or-treating, that seems very appropriate. I liked Fred dressed as the Blue Falcon, and I liked, Daphne was dressed as Wonder Woman. That was cute. Because I know they've met Wonder Woman in Guess Who as well, so that was adorable. And yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind that Fred, Daphne, and Velma knew each other and then met Shaggy. Yeah, for this version of the gang, I think it works fine. I know I liked it. It was a cute little scene. It just very quickly established them because obviously everyone going to see this film knows all these people all become friends. So it was just a nice short and sweet.
And I like how it kind of sets up a bit more of a foundation for their love of mysteries as well, kind of like how, I don't know, I just think it outlines in a better way than most do that this is their first mystery. It might only be small, it might only be short, but it's kind of what sets the foundation for it, that they actually like mysteries. Because I think quite often with Shaggy and Scooby, you kind of wonder how they still want to do it. Whereas I do think this actually sets up an actual enjoyment of mysteries, and then from the end of that we kind of roll into the titles. We see the gang age up. So I guess kind of in terms of the animation, like we say, now we've seen the entire gang together, I really like it. I like the animation for this. I like the character designs. I like how they've moved them forwards. I think it's cute for both the kids, but also when they've aged them up. I love some of the details on this, how they give Daphne kind of like a green collar on a more modernized look of Daphne, but still kind of keep the color palette kind of right. Even with Fred, there's just the edge of his t-shirt has that orange line. So again, Ascot, they want to modernize things. So they just make it a slight color detail on his t-shirt. I really like what they do. It's all, but I do think it's kind of nothing against normal Scooby animation, but I think you could tell this was cinematic. This was different. It was very much, and I don't know if anyone else kind of has any of the movies that they kind of associate with it, but like for me, it was almost like the animation style, like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It was brighter. It was, I don't know what I'm trying to say because I'm not that into art, or at least I don't know that much about it, but there was just something about the color palette, the lines, it all seemed different. JayBee?
Yeah, I liked all of their looks, to be honest. The only ones that I didn't was that like those interim looks, where it's like where they're recreating the 1969 intro, and some of the outfits that the kids are wearing in some of those scenes are a bit like it looks like the Snapchat Bitmoji like custom like outfits and some of them. But I guess, it kind of makes sense. It's like them going from their normal casual outfits to the styles we know and love. So yeah, I can kind of see that aspect of things. But I'm absolutely in love with Daphne's outfit in this. Again, I love how they like you say, Millie, with the accents, like going with the green. Again, though, I would prefer the original design, but this is just such a great modernization that I do like it. Fred's a tricky one because I like it, but I always do prefer the classic Fred design, and that's always been something that I've always stuck to, even if it's what's new Scooby Doo 2002. It's just there's something about that original look for Fred that I think is just I just want to see more of it, and
I
yeah,
mean,
the others
sorry
don't really
to
change, do
interrupt
they?
you, but there was a character that we didn't mention. Shaggy doesn't often change much, but I like the look with the white top underneath
Yeah, it's
because
like
the reason
Unleashed.
being for me is the first set of Scooby characters I ever had was the Ghost Patrol ones. And I believe in that he's got a white top under the green t-shirt. So for me, it's like that's the first version that I ever had. So I kind of like it more for that reason. But I guess while we're kind of breaking down the characters as well, on the voice acting, really enjoyed it. I think it was really good. I know the first time I watched it, I was wondering if Scooby maybe spoke too much. Certainly there was a lot wordier lines than normal, but I do think ultimately, especially when he's younger, it does sound cute.
What voice acting? The kids, the
Or
adults,
just in
all of them?
general, I liked all of it.
Yeah, I think the voices, we could have almost done that really in terms of formatting, like gone through the characters, but then we'd probably be here a million years. I think all the kids are great. Again, we don't get much of them. We would have, but we don't get much of them. But they all make a good impression, and especially now, McKenna Grace and Ariana Greenblatt, they've skyrocketed in terms of their name. So it's kind of crazy to see them here, and now they're in Barbie, they're in Ghostbusters. That's kind
I
of
guess
crazy.
where you have to be impressed with the kids as well. And I'm so sorry because we're breaking this up into like larger chunks than normal. So it feels like it's ages since I asked Anna or Sophie a question. But like I think something as well that I kind of give credit to here for the younger actors is they were more definitively the gang, whereas Fred was definitively Zac Efron. Like that was what he sounded like. That's who he was. He didn't sound like Fred, he sounded like himself. And I think that's what they wanted because they wanted you to recognize the name that they'd got. So I think again, big credit to the younger
So
actors.
let's ask everyone.
So yeah, I was gonna say now just throwing that massive chunk of stuff over to Dan. In terms of the gang here, how did you feel? The look, the voice, did you think it kind of translated well?
Okay, yes. So, in terms of, so I'll just go over the costumes first. I did like, because I remember when it was first coming out and we hadn't seen pictures of the gang and they started to release them or leaks started to come out. I genuinely liked them, and I thought I was expecting, as always, it's Fred and Daphne who always get the major redesigns. You know, Velma looks pretty much the same, and yeah, Shaggy with the white shirt, I like that because that reminded me of Monsters Unleashed because Shaggy has the white shirt underneath in that. I liked Daphne. I always thought she, with the hair and everything, she looked very like Kate Melton. So I like that. And I didn't mind Fred. I think he was the one, like, I don't know, the way his face looked, it took me a while to get used to him more than any. But I liked the jacket they had on. It looked a bit like in Monsters Unleashed when they're in their headquarters. Freddie Prinze Jr. wears one that's very similar. And yeah, they all look like the gang. You see them, even though they're not the traditional gang. You can tell who they are, just CGI. In terms of the voices, I liked the younger voice cast. I don't know how many of them are. I know that the one who voiced Shaggy is young Sheldon. I thought he did a really good job. Um, to be honest, I was annoyed going into it. I know Matthew Lillard made a very huge complaint that they were recast. And I know on the day it was released, I think Gray tweeted something out about how upset she was, and that does annoy me. I know that's a huge problem in general in Hollywood, where a lot of voice actors, when it comes to the big blockbusters, are sort of pushed aside for known names. And I don't think it's necessary. I don't think people go to see animated films for the voice. But to be honest, I didn't mind them. I didn't mind Zac Efron as Fred, which I thought I would, with it not being Frank, and it's always Frank. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate Amanda Seyfried as Daphne. Can't remember who voiced Velma, but I didn't mind her. I did dislike the voice for Shaggy. I can't even tell you the actor's name, but I thought it was awful. It sounded like someone who was trying to remember what Shaggy sounded like from their childhood, and they just put this really. Because I remember I watched a few film reviewers, and it was ones who hadn't seen Scooby in ages, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Shaggy sounds great," and I'm like, "No, you just misremember it. It sounds awful. It does. It just sounds like they said, "Oh, do you remember what Shaggy sounds like?" "Oh yeah, he's a bit of a wheezy voice." No, I never got used to it. That is my major nitpick with the gang is I did not like Shaggy's voice. It should have just been Matthew Lillard because because I don't even remember who the actor was who voiced Shaggy. I think Matthew Lillard's a much more known name. They should, if any of the gang, they should have kept him. But yeah, other than that, I did like the gang. I like the designs and I like the voice cast.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about cinematic draw, like with Matthew Lillard, you've had both of the live action 2002, 2004 movies, Scream, like in terms of like the big screen in the cinema, he's no stranger to it. Like
See,
it
that's
would
the one that doesn't make sense because I
Yeah.
love Grey, obviously, she's bae, but Amanda Seyfried been in like massive movies.
Mm.
She does a good job. Like it is what it is. Again with Velma, like as long as she isn't annoying,
Who
I'll
hasn't
take
voiced
it.
Velma at this point?
Whereas that Will Forte, who was the one that did play Shaggy in this, he wasn't as good as Matthew Lillard. I don't believe he's as popular as Matthew Lillard. But also, as I was kind of saying, with like like the casual lens looking into it, a lot of people, because this was the discourse that I was aware of, and also I was of a similar mindset, although not exactly that far removed myself, of, oh, this is the first Scooby in quite a while. If part of the marketing was Matthew Lillard is back as Shaggy, I would say that that would actually draw a lot more people in. Like, because Farrell was voicing it since Abracadabra do, just having in the trailer Matthew Lillard returns as Shaggy, like, I think that would bring a lot of the nostalgic crowd back. People would go nuts for that. But yeah, that was such a bad choice. I don't know why they did that. But yeah, awful.
I also think because it could be that they wanted to bring a young, refreshing take on things. And if you've seen the FNAF movie, they try and age Matthew Lillard up there. He's not as old as he looks in that movie. Like, if this was about getting a young, fresher take on it, when we met him at For the Love of Horror, he looked about 20 years younger than he does in FNAF. They just aged him up like well there. So it's not like it's even about getting this fresh take and a younger voice set. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't say that was part of it. Sophie, how do you feel about this entire bracket of things we've just been discussing, from voice acting to the look of the gun?
Like there's a lot. The animation style I love. I really love this, updated like CGI look. A lot of like the modern Disney movies, DreamWorks, etc. I mean, I wouldn't want it to carry on throughout the franchise. I think, like Milly said, standalone cinematic piece, which really like takes off. But the gang, I don't mind the outfits. Yeah, they've taken a modern look. I think I'd prefer the original, obviously. you know, it is what it is. In terms of the voice acting, I way preferred like the children, like the younger gang, more than the teenage adult gang. I think, you know, when we get into the first scene with the gang, you know, Simon Cowell, I think with this intro, it's the transition from like them being, you know, kids to like teenagers. And definitely as kids, they seem to gel a lot more as a gang and a friendship there than probably lacks going further. But I mean, I love the intro, like the theme song. I love how they reenacted like all the main iconic parts. You know, the villains. I think the villains were like definitely top notch. Of like Captain Cutler, Charlie. Yeah, that was
Oh,
definitely
the
my favorite
space
part.
too. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly some things that they do quite well, and we're now approaching the first thing that they did that I didn't like. And that's Simon Cowell. Like, it's so maybe a weird thing to say that you don't like, and I don't have anything against Simon Cowell, but why? I don't get why he was there. I don't get what he was meant to do, what benefit it was meant to be of to anybody. Like, I just don't know why he was part of it, other than I don't know if it was just we got this name that people are going to recognize, but they did that with Zac Efron, although obviously they made this look like Simon Cowell. To me, this was the first bit that was like, okay, this is just a bit strange and I don't get why you're there. And how is it you've got the power to break the gang up again? JayBee.
Yeah, this was so odd and random and bizarre. Like, okay, here's the thing, and I'm getting a bit hypocritical, right? Because I think about this Simon Cowell scene, and I'm cringing. I think it's pointless. I think it's stupid. It's irrelevant. I don't know how big of a name Simon Cowell is outside of the UK, although I know he did like American Idol or something. I don't know. Like, I guess he's a big name. So I'm disliking this for that reason. But I know never once having a problem with Pamela Anderson randomly showing up in the 2002 movie. So on one hand, I'm like, this is cringy, this is stupid. On another hand, I'm like, I guess I kind of thought nothing of that back then. So
Okay, but Pamela Anderson played a character, not played a character, but like she was like, oh, you saved this person. This doesn't move the story forward in any
I mean,
positive
arguably,
way.
it moves it forward in too much. Like, if it was just some stupid cameo, maybe you could say, "Oh, that was a thing," but maybe you could argue it was almost too involved.
I'm
Like,
gonna say something, and it's probably completely incorrect, but to me, my knowledge of Simon Cowell is he's just somebody who says nasty stuff to people on TV.
no,
Like
well,
I'm not aware of him through any personal merit, any talent. Just he gets paid to sit and make nasty comments about things that other people do. So I don't get how he's there, why he's there, or what would warrant him getting a portion of the budget for this, because I imagine it wasn't a small portion of the budget to get Simon Cowell to turn up. So I just don't get what the draw is with him. Sophie, do you?
I think it's such a random thing. Like, he didn't actually add anything to the story. You didn't actually need him in this movie at all. I think because of his cameo, I think I just kept thinking about Shrek all the time. Like, I think it was like a special feature. But yeah, it was really random. I remember watching like behind the scenes of him doing the voice, well, his voice. And it's just like, I know it's like, you know, cinematic, you know, they went for the big names and stuff, but I can't fathom why. It's such a random idea. And like you said, like there would have been a lot of money involved and for nothing. Like he didn't add anything. And even when he cropped up at the end of the movie, I was like, I don't need to see you again. Like, why?
No. And I mean, I know this is an entirely different thing, but like this movie actually has some great talent. Like I thought, and I'm gonna get his name wrong now, Jason Isaacs, have I said it right?
yeah.
As Dick Dastardly sounded fantastic. He was so good. And it was like, what's Simon Cowell doing when you've got somebody on this level? Like, am I right in saying they then used him for Sword and the Scoob?
They did, but I think he was all right in Sword.
I do too, but I almost feel like he
Was
did
it?
that well in Scoob, and they were like, "We've got him anyway. Let's do this again."
I
Because
love it. Yeah.
like, I would never think of him as a voice actor. I'm just like, oh yeah, the guy from Harry Potter, but he
Lucius.
proved himself as a voice actor here. So to see somebody that talented turn up, to then have somebody just turn up, be themselves, and get a big payday, I think it's
two
kind of
UK people as
disgusting.
well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Simon Cowell, he is literally just the guy that I remember from my childhood, blocking up on the screen so I could see more of Amanda Holden. Like, that's my memory of Simon Cowell.
I just, like I said, I really don't get it. And I don't get why he was given the power that he was to break the gang up, because he's just walked in the building for the first time.
Will Forte singing, that was my least favourite Shaggy moment. My least favourite moment of the movie.
Oh, that was horrible.
Like, that's the type of thing that I'd rather sit on a cactus and rotate than listen
It
to the
sounded like, you know, when you hear about like chalk going down a chalkboard and it squeaks, and you know, yeah, it was kind of like that.
Like Kate McCutcheon.
I was just thinking the same thing. Dan, how did you feel about Simon Cowell?
Oh, I'm so glad we're all on the same page, because that was after that great intro. I just remember my heart dropped at that moment. It was awful. I still remember one time my friend messaged me saying, "Oh, I'm going to watch the Scoob movie," and like 10 minutes later, I just got a message being like, "What the hell? Why is Simon Cowell in this film?" Like you say, like I'm not opposed to the celebrity cameos, because Scooby's always done that since they were making like Cher and stuff back in the day, but. I thought he looked awful. He looked really uncanny. He looked too realistic compared to the gang. It's so random. It's so out of nowhere. You say he has the power over the gang for some reason. I was like, why? That's the thing. Whenever they meet celebrities, the celebrities are just normally just there, or they don't have any power over the gang. They just, oh look, it's this person. Whereas I don't know. I didn't like it. I'm not the biggest fan of Simon Cowell in general. I did watch The X Factor back in the day. I did watch Britain's Got Talent. And I know Sophie mentioned Shrek, but that was like the behind the scenes. And I know he's done episodes of The Simpsons, which are fine. But yeah, I do not like it. And like Sophie mentioned, he comes back at the end. And I remember that was the biggest jump scare of the film when you see Simon again. I was like, oh no, not you. Please don't double down on this. So yeah, no, I don't get it. I don't. And can I just say, I think, was this film shelved or something? Because this film, especially with that cameo, for some reason feels like 2015. Like a lot of this film, I just think this did not come out in 2020. It's almost like they filmed it, oh, Simon, yeah, everyone knows him. And then sat on it for 5 years. So since when they released it, it's like, why?
There's just some painfully, I don't know, like Blue Falcon, like dabbing and stuff like that when he turns up. It's just like, I don't know that this has aged this movie quite badly. Like there's lots of like things like that, but also, you know, you were saying about Simon Cowell's voice. I had a game for the PlayStation 2 and his voice was in it. I think it was like Pop Idol or something. And when he voiced that, it sounded like a mechanical version of his voice. There was too many gaps, too many pauses. It didn't sound like him speaking. It sounded like some weird mechanical, like there was gaps in between. Do you know what I mean? It didn't sound like it flowed. It sounded like this shockingly bad PlayStation 2 game from 15 years ago. It's almost like he felt the pressure of trying to sound like himself and didn't sound like himself. It was really weird. But I'm glad that we all agree that that was just completely strange. It's kind of a sad part of the movie. Shaggy and Scooby leave and go to the Takamoto Bowl, which is where we meet the Rottens. We kind of get quite a fun scene here. That kind of, you know, Scooby Doo quirk where they dress up as other people, interact with the villains, and the villains don't recognize them, and then everything goes wrong. But I think my favorite bit that comes away from the Takamoto Bowl is when the rest of the gang go back later to try and work out what's happened to Shaggy and Scooby, and the person that works there is just giving them abuse, because quite frankly they deserve that. Oh yeah, whoever it was must have been horrible friends, and if it wasn't for those horrible friends this wouldn't have happened. I'm like, yeah, I'm fully with you. They were horrible with what they just did. JayBee, do you like the Takamoto Bowl scene?
I love the Takamoto Ball, like the design, obviously the name pays homage, and just the design of the Rottens. I actually do really like the
They
Rottens.
can be so cute. They're terrifying.
They're cute little teddy bears, and then they can turn into those cool scorpion things. Like, I love the Rottens so much. Yeah, it's just such a. I like the scene a lot, and when like they freak out because they're out of calamari, it's a perfect blend between Shaggy and Scooby having their moment, but also there's a level of seriousness to it. Whereas for all their playing parts, they're probably not actually going to be making calamari for all these little robots. The fact that they knew that they were out broke the illusion for everyone. I just think that was a great way to pay respect to the original tropes, but also moving the own story forward. Do we know who voiced that person that worked at the bowling alley? Because I was thinking they do a really good job, but I think that would have been the perfect moment to be a bit more respectful with the original voice actors. Like, not like original, but or maybe current. Because you can imagine that type of role that could have easily been, Gray or Kate McCucci or just someone of like that's worked on an older Scooby project, like that type of
It
role.
could
But
be, but I also think if you were to propose that to the current voice cast, it's kind of adding insult to injury of we don't want you to be the main cast, but just so we can use you in the marketing and say you are still involved, here's a role where we're going to pay you a tenth of what you deserve to say about 2 lines. I think that
I
would have
don't know. I
probably
think
annoyed
it's
them
more
more.
about respect. Like Charles Martinet wasn't Mario in the Mario movie, but he played like Mario's dad, something like that. Maybe would have been. And they got to abuse that current version of Mystery Inc. Like that would have
Yeah,
just been a funny thing.
maybe.
But yeah, yeah.
Dan, what did you think to the Takamoto Bowl?
Yeah, no, I did like the scene. It was cute. Yeah, and I remember this was one that was shown in the trailers quite a bit. So yeah, I do like it. Um, like you say, yeah, I think the gang did deserve that abuse. I absolutely did. I thought it was cute. I like the designs of everything. Um, and yeah, I do. It would have been nice if Gray could have had like a little cameo there, but like you say, that's a bit of an insult. Say, well, we know you're Daphne, but in this film, this big blockbuster, you're not going to be Daphne. You're going to be this really minuscule character. Yeah, that would be a slap in the face. But
Yeah.
and I think that's a big because I know talented voice actors like Gray. Disney films do just ask them to do like background characters and everything. So I think Gray would be yeah, I can imagine Gray would have a few choice words if they'd suggested that to her. But no, the scene in general, it was nice. Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Good. And Sophie?
I feel like with any like Scoob movie, like any movie in general, you always watch it for the first time with like filtered lens and you kind of like brush past all like the negative parts. But straight away, I think it still leads from like the Simon Cowell scene. You pick up I don't find the gang really friendly with one another. Like I don't get that really fuzzy, warm-hearted feeling. Like they're kind of all strangers. And obviously the theme song was a transition, from them meeting as kids and they've grown up together into teenagers. And I just find it kind of like a really uncomfortable dynamic between them all. So yeah, they did deserve like that, from the woman behind the Takamoto, saying, who'd let them down like that. Yeah, I still can't believe it now. I kind of feel really comfortable about the whole situation. I mean, the Shaggy and Scooby scenes were cute and adorable. I liked Scooby on his like little tiptoes running up and doing the ball and ball. That was cute. But yeah, I don't know why this direction of like Fred, Velma, and Fred, Velma, and Daphne. Sorry, they don't seem friendly with one another. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else feels that way.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about that so much while watching, because obviously Holiday Haunt's been on my mind a lot. I was kind of thinking, like, it just doesn't seem like there's a whole group of adventures in between them as kids and this now. It's almost like they've just reunited. Yeah, I was thinking that almost like maybe Holiday Haunt would have added too much emotion to them because we're gonna have this really cute, cozy Christmas movie where they're all gonna get along and learn about the values of the holidays, and then oh well, like in 20 years' time or something, they're just gonna abandon each other forever.
But it's hard to believe that you could have had the time elapse in between. And it just feels like they've grown more distant than together. Like there isn't a moment where they're actively ever nice to each other. From them aging up instantly, it's not even here's one nice moment where we show that they're actually friends. It's instantly like, okay, you two get out. It just never has that moment, I don't think. But speaking of them two being their separate ways, they get kind of what's the word, beamed up into the Falcon Force, or is it Falcon Fury? What do they call it?
It's the Falcon Fury, but the Falcon Force is something else, right? Or is it the Falcon Force?
I don't know.
Wait,
I'm
no, the
not.
Falcon Force is the name of the team.
So the
The
Falcon
Falcon
Fury is
Fury
what they
is the
get beamed
name
up
of
into.
the like beam me up Scotty like type thing, like, and everyone gets all
I
excited.
really like this scene. I think it's quite funny. You know, when Dynamite's kind of putting the son of Blue Falcon down, like, oh yeah, you're not the real one. No one's gonna think you're the real one. I don't know why. I just find it funny.
See, I think that's a good example of a new take because this Dynamite is so different than the original one, and I know people didn't like that. And again, I think that sticking to the original it tends to be a good idea. But I think Ken Jeong's performance fits this version of Dynamite so much, and it's also not just a change for the sake of it. It's story. Like clearly, Dynamite and original Blue Falcon had such a good bond together that when like someone else comes along to fulfill that role, he's just so tired and fed up with the new Blue Falcon and whatever he's doing that he
Even
has just become a bit deadpan and just oh yeah, like this is I'm Dynamite. Like it's just I think it's good. I think it's good.
even that line of "we miss him really, really, really," and the Blue Falcon's like, I think he's glitching again, and he's like, no, really, really, really much.
Like
Like,
you guys know I love Dick. Like Jason Isaacs as Dick Dastardly in this is I think S tier. And I think a lot of people tend to agree with that. So I do have a great love for Dick in this movie, but if I'm gonna choose one honorable mention, like one like kind of underrated, I think it's gotta be Ken Jeong as Dynamo for me. Like Dick will always
are
be
you
my number
sure it's
one,
not Simon
but
Cowell?
Ken Jeong, like you know what I mean?
Not
It's
Simon
not
Cowell as Simon Cowell.
don't you talk to me about Simon Cowell. Like we can move on from that. We can move on from all this Simon Cowell stuff.
I just think kind of how they set up the Falcon Fury with all the like noises in the background and the flashing lights when I keep referring to him as the Blue Falcon, but he's not, kind of appears. Like I can see a younger audience getting engaged with that, and like if they don't have an interest in the franchise, getting an interest in the franchise. So I can see that there were certainly some benefits to having these kind of grand scenes where it's this massive kind of like spaceship thing. So I quite like the scene. Sophie, what was your thoughts?
You see, I really want to love this movie, but I think, you know, what everybody said, it's not really a Scooby movie. It is just a general Hanna-Barbera universe, you know, and all the characters aren't the original. They're all kind of a new updated version. So it's always like a fever dream. It's a bit wacky. But I do kind of like this adaptation of Blue Falcon and Dynamite and the chemistry between them two. Like Dynamite's so over it, you know, Blue Falcon's, you know, like a little kid. Yeah, I just kind of accept it. I think, you know, I want to really love it. I don't know what else to say or get further into it. But I think because, you know, I think also the gang, their personalities are quite removed from who they are in, you know, the cartoon. And I think you have to look at it as a completely different universe. And as we say, it's not really a Scooby one, it's just Hanna-Barbera in general. But I think, yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to DD Skies now. I don't understand why she's there, and yet Captain Caveman, they've never met, but they're part of the Team Angels. That's always got me. I don't know if anyone's thought about that, but I feel there's just like a few little gaps that they don't gel well together at times, and I kind of like they should, because we've seen it in the past work. Why doesn't it really work here, sort of thing? But overall, I think Blue Falcon and Dynamite, I do like this iteration. I mean, I think I prefer the original, but I think, you know, the different dynamics between the two of them, yeah, I think it's quite fun.
I think that was very much, I think perhaps that was some lapse in, they wanted to bring in way more Hanna-Barbera characters than what they did. And I think given the option to do that, it might have made a bit more sense because they had perhaps had more scope with what they were going to do with it. But like you said, that little bit there was quite jarring. At this point as well, I think they start to illustrate that Blue Falcon's son is in charge. So they find out that they're going after these skulls. And he's like, oh, I want to go there. And someone works out where the other one is. And he's like, nope, I want to go here. I got this anonymous tip online. Again, kind of bringing in kind of technology, phones, stuff like that, that kind of perhaps could age it a little bit. Obviously, it doesn't at the minute, but I think there's
Tinder, Netflix.
yeah.
I was like, we get another one. There's another one. Like, there's Tinder, there's Netflix, and it's like,
This might just be me being a bit sensitive, but I'm kind of surprised that they made a joke about Tinder in a kids movie.
the kids know about Tinder.
I don't know, but to me, if you don't know what something is, you ask what it is. So, like, I imagine a few parents were sat in the cinema and had their kids turn to them and go, "Mum, what's Tinder?" I don't want to be answering that question.
I wouldn't mind.
I don't know. I just think it's a bit strange. But I think this is kind of around the time that we meet Dick Dastardly's character as well, which, as we've said, I think we pretty much unanimously agreed across the board. This was done brilliantly. And then they end up at the amusement park, which again, I think is quite a fun sequence. It kind of, I think there's almost these kind of markers within the story of we're going to bring people together here, we're going to bring them back together here, and then all together again at the end. And I think this was just the first of the 3 markers of let's try bringing people together and building that dynamic. JayBee, anything that you want to add about the movie up to this point?
Up until like that whole scene with
that amusement scene where they're on like the Ferris wheel and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think we get a Hex Girls Easter egg somewhere there, which is cool. Again, adding on to the list of massive things of why I love Dick so much is that delivery of like come right, like it was like, "Stop here, you filthy animal," and it's like, "And your dog." I just think that was just such a funny bit of line delivery. Oh, I just think it's good, but yeah, not too much to add from that.
Sophie, anything you want to add about this point?
I think is it when they start flying and the G-force hit Shaggy and Scooby? I think this would have happened around here.
Oh,
it's
God.
a really terrifying scene.
Yeah.
Like the animation is like scary, nightmare fuel. I'll just put that out there. It didn't. The execution was not there. Like I said, the Easter eggs, like the Hex Girls, also Funland, Charlie's episode, that was a really good throwback. Like JayBee said, I think all the comedy elements do work and they do get a laugh out of me. I do like the sequence a lot. I think in the mirrors with Dick and Scooby, that's quite a fun one. But I think this is probably one of my favorite sequences out of the whole movie, but I don't really want to say that.
Dan, what about you? How are you feeling about the movie at this point?
Yeah, I think the sequence of obviously Shaggy and Scooby, the Blue Falcon, all of that was fine. I like the film Mask of the Blue Falcon, so I did know going into the film who he was. I didn't know who Dee Dee was. I obviously didn't know who Dick Dastardly was, but it was just sort of spell the beginning of the end for me, because I remember when I first realised that they were introducing these characters when I saw the trailers, and I was like, oh no, this is a Hanna-Barbera film in Scooby packaging, just like that god-awful Arabian Nights film. And it just I know it sounds cynical, but it just feels as though Scooby was so successful, and I know they've tried a few times to reboot like the Flintstones and stuff. And it just feels like Warner Brothers is like, okay, we've got all these IPs, they're not working, but Scooby Doo is. So we'll make sure the audience like these characters. We'll just put them all in a Scooby film. Obviously, it's not as bad as it was going to be. I do know there was a lot more wacky races and stuff like that originally, but yeah, and as well, the film just commits the Cardinal Scooby sin for me, and it splits up the gang. I don't like that. I never like that. Whenever they have Scooby and Shaggy on their own little adventure, and then the gang just gets sidelined, and I just thought, oh, for a big movie, for a big blockbuster film, why couldn't you've got Zac Efron and Amanda Seyfried are the big names for the gang. Why are you sidelining them? So whilst I don't mind the sequence, and this up until this point the film is fine, yeah, it's those sort of elements come into it, and I'm just like, oh no.
There was that was actually something that my next point kind of that I've written down is that separation of the gang, because I think for all the apart, they do it better than they do in some iterations. Because if you think back to the Goblin King, not that want to kind of delve into this movie or list any issues I may have with it, but you don't see the gang at all. You just see Shaggy and Scooby all the way through. Whereas I think at least here they try and keep some elements of the gang. There's a really sweet moment, it could just be me that finds it sweet, but I thought it was adorable, where Daphne helps the rotten that's kind of got the Hoover as a head and like clears it out and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they do quite a nice job of just developing Daphne as a really nice character. Like, even when everything's falling apart towards the end and Cerberus is out of the gates and all this sort of stuff, Daphne just keeps being so
We
nice.
can call it like plot convenience, whatever, but like they get an army of robots just off the back of Daphne being bare. Like that's kind of crazy when you think about it.
But I do see, like you're saying, that we don't see much with the gang interacting, and I don't think they ever do anything to really bridge that relationship that's been torn apart at the start. Like, yes, the gang are trying to help Shaggy and Scooby, but they spend every episode and every movie trying to help people that they've never
Although
met before.
there
There
is that
was
scene where Blue Falcon is actively trying to antagonize Shaggy, and then you get all of the gang defending him. So I suppose that's kind of there, but Scooby's not even around for that. So
yeah, but even at the end when the rest of the gang are there, it's just about Shaggy and Scooby and their
oh
friendship.
yeah, that's what yes, exactly. That's one thing I didn't like. The fact that like, oh, it's Scooby and his best friend need to do this, and Fred's just like, that's you, Shaggy. Like,
Yeah, we
I-
don't like Scooby that much.
yeah, like, come on, go sacrifice yourself. I like the idea that any one of them could have done it, and I wish that that was more of a
Yeah.
focal point versus just like, oh no, we're just gonna stand here while you two have your little moment.
But I think Dan made a very valid point there. They keep everybody quite separate in this movie. Sophie, is it something you picked up on? Is it something that you've got any thoughts on?
Yeah, I hate it. I think the only recognizable character in this is Scooby. I feel like, as I said, like all the other, characters, gang members, they've all had like a different take on them. But it's kind of like a really awkward, disconnected feel, which doesn't flow or sit right. And I think I don't like Shaggy and Scooby together and then the other three together. They're the gang. I like them as the gang. I don't like when they focus solely on, I mean, if it's like a 50-50 split, okay, and then they come together, but it was very heavy Shaggy and Scooby. I think out of the whole gang, I think Shaggy and Scooby did have the best connection dynamic between the two of them. But like I said, the gang's a gang, like keep them together, stop breaking them up. And like you said, I just didn't get any friendship like throughout the whole movie. It was just like they're like classmates, you know them, you get on well with each other, but you wouldn't like take a bullet for them sort of thing. And I just didn't get I was very disappointed with that whole dynamic of the gang, which I'm quite bitter about, but I could go on and on and on, but yeah, I'll keep it as that.
I think there's quite a bit that you can get bitter about a little bit in this movie, because obviously one of the next kind of sequences is where Scooby gets that new outfit and he takes off the collar that Shaggy got him. So then Shaggy's really upset and on his own again for a little bit. And then we see this new divide in that Scooby's on one side, Shaggy's on another side. You've got the three other members of the gang on a different tangent. It's a lot of isolation points, really. How did you feel about that scene, JayBee, where Scooby got the new outfit? From there, it just led to a divide where when they got to the second location, Shaggy didn't want to go with them.
I hate it, but I know that from like a perspective of what the audience will take away, they use it as a message about not being overcome by jealousy, that it's okay for things to change because people can grow. It's crap. I don't like it, but I mean, if kids learn something from it, then fine, but I'm not a kid, I don't have kids. I'm hesitant to say that I even enjoy the concept of kids, but yeah, it's a message, it's a positive message, so it's not evil.
Dan, how did you feel about that second divide between Shaggy and Scooby?
Yeah, not a fan. I understand a lot of films, they need drama, but I don't know. I don't like the gang arguing. I don't like the gang. I know obviously friends can argue, but I've never liked that. Like I've always much preferred, so say in Zombie Island, where they just grew apart, but then when they got back together, they were still friends, rather than in the live action one where they have a fight and that's what breaks them up. The same as here, we see the gang, you know, get torn apart at first, and then Shaggy and Scooby, I don't like that. Shaggy and Scooby are the two that have to stick together. Like in Zombie Island, Shaggy they went a separate way, but Shaggy and Scooby stuck together. You know, in the live action one, Shaggy and Scooby stuck together. So I don't like seeing them argue. I don't like the separation. And again, it just seems unnecessary. It just feels like the people writing it thought, oh, well, we need more drama. And I just think you can create that elsewhere. You don't have to keep pitting the gang against each other. So no, I wasn't a fan.
Sophie, how did you feel about it?
I mean, for any big movie, like there's always like some sort of drama, soppy element to it. And this is one of the elements. Yeah, I think like we all agree, like it wasn't a good part. I think I keep going back to the whole gang situation, the fact that they're not together, they're not friends, and they're just distant characters from each other, which, you know, like I said, I could go on, but whatever little hope you had of Shaggy and Scooby is now gone as well. So there's nothing left. It's not really a Scooby movie at this point.
No, it requires a lot to try and mend this, and I don't think the next run of events helps anything too much, in that you then have Dick Dastardly showing up as Fred. That doesn't try and mend the relationship between the gang and them at all. If anything, it just kind of makes you have more negative feelings towards the rest of the gang, which messed up initially anyway. Some random appearance by Captain Caveman, about as random as Simon Cowell turning up, and about as unimpactful as well, really. I mean, if Warner Brothers had followed this up with, okay, this is a soft relaunch for Captain Caveman, we're gonna do some mass project that we're investing a lot into, and this is just the test audience for it, fine. But not even fine, I'd prefer they hadn't done it. But I don't think that they really achieve much here. I just think we have a series of events that I'm not too fond of. Like I said, the thing with Fred, Captain Caveman, that just results in Scooby getting taken away. Everyone else is kind of somewhat reunited, but really you're just patching over the cracks a little bit because they need to save Scooby, which really the rest of the gang hadn't shown any indication they cared enough to want to save Scooby until this point. JayBee?
I don't mind the idea of the Captain Caveman scene as much. Like in execution, quite weak, but I like the concept of, if we're having a world of Hanna-Barbera, the one thing that would be like eating away at my mind a bit is, how are we gonna sort out where, say, the Flintstones are from versus the Jetsons? Like, is it gonna be that theory that it is all in the future, but the Flintstones are just the working class, the Jetsons are like the bourgeoisie? Like, are they like the really, really posh people? And I like the idea that within this Hanna-Barbera world, there's some like Wakandan portal that takes you to somewhere where the biome's a little bit more prehistoric, where those characters can exist. So in terms of world building, I think it's all right. I enjoy that concept. It's just when we get there, it just looks a little bit too, I don't know, just a little bit too clean cut, a little bit too cliche. And I don't think Tracy Morgan is a particularly good Captain Caveman. Like, I think in terms of making his dialogue cleaner, he maybe couldn't have been that rough, screaming person that he was in the original cartoons. But I think there was more of a middle ground. It's just, I don't think they found it. And also the slag hoople. I always think it's really funny that, like, the slag hooples are there. But yeah, it's just, I think it could have worked. And if they made a sequel, more about that universe, maybe a Flintstones spin-off, I think it could have been good to utilize that setting. It's just, I don't think it was necessary.
No, and I didn't even think it was the right environment for Captain Caveman either, really. It was more tropical rainforest with, like, I don't know, like some kind of Greek Colosseum thing. I don't think I've asked already. So Dan, what's your thoughts on this?
Oh God, so Captain Caveman. Well, Captain Caveman is not a character. I know him by sight, but I can honestly say I don't even know what show he's from. Is it just called Captain Caveman? I've never seen it. I don't particularly want to see it. Yeah, again, when I first watched it, I think my mum and dad knew who they were, because we were watching it on my birthday. they reacted more than I did to Captain Caveman. I was just like, oh well, I'm glad you was having fun. But again, it just I do have a theory that when this film was first made, presumably in 2015, that I imagine Warner Brothers did have a plan. I bet they did want to sort of introduce him to a new audience, so they sort of like gave him a cameo here. But obviously, when this film came out, we can never know how successful it would have been because it came out in the pandemic. So it seems like Warner Brothers have abandoned that. So we're just left with this film where Captain Caveman shows up. Yeah, like you say, I was expecting more cameos, like more like little Easter eggs, but it seemed like a weird place. I don't understand why. I don't know. Is Captain Caveman set actually in caveman times, or is he does he live in a rainforest? I don't know the character, so just saying, I was like, why is this hairy weird thing here? I know. I'm just not a fan of. I just don't like them shoving in other characters when it's supposed to be a Scooby film, and it's promoted as it wasn't promoted as a Hanna-Barbera film. It is a Scoob movie, and no, I don't hate the scene. Like I say, I'd take this any day over Simon Cowell. That Simon Cowell cameo means that any other cameo was bound to be okay, but I just don't care for it.
No, I think I'd agree. And Sophie?
See, I don't mind the idea of a Hanna-Barbera universe. However, they seem to have chucked a lot of characters together with no thought why. And it's all kind of random, a bit of a mismatch and whatever. But the thing with Captain Caveman, he's from the same series as DD Skies, right? So it's like Shaggy and Scooby meeting this random guy named Fred Jones, which they've never seen before. And it's like, but you're from the same franchise. Why are you doing it separately? Which I can't like fathom. Does annoy me a little bit. I don't know if you can tell. I mean, I didn't mind the scene. It didn't really add anything to it. I suppose it was there for a bit of fun, to get a few laughs, but it wasn't anything hysterical like. I don't know. I mean, even, Tracy Morgan, the Captain Caveman catchphrase, wasn't the original, which I think, like Scooby Doo or like when they did with Muttley, their catchphrase needs to be their catchphrases, like they need to be recognizable in that way. But like I said, I think all of these characters, apart from Scooby, are like a different version of the characters anyway, which I do like, the unique new take on it, but it kind of misses each character, which I'm not a fan of.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I think this movie maybe misses on a few points, like some ideas that maybe it falls short on. And again, I kind of have to wonder if there's certain criteria that were given to the writers, and it was, we need to tick this box. We need to have Captain Caveman. We need to have Simon Cowell because we like the idea of this, and his son must really like it, and he's just asked if he can be involved in the project, so work him in as well. By the way, he wants to be unmasked, so you need to work that in somehow. Do you know what I mean? There's almost bits that seem strange, and it's kind of like you almost think that they had to be inserted in a certain place and in a certain way.
It reminds me a little bit of like, in the Mario movie where they have to go to like the Kingdom of the Kongs and stuff like that, like a little tangent area where they meet someone that has to challenge someone. That's kind of part of that franchise, but not really. A little bit like that.
Well, we were told that there were several different variations of this movie that were written and scripted, and it's almost like it was done too many times because there were certain bits that had to be kept every time and that didn't actually fully make one cohesive story. But I guess kind of progressing on, and we'll kind of discuss our overall view of the movie kind of with the smash or passes. But so at this point, Dick Dastardly has Scooby Doo, and he takes him then to the gate where Scooby, as the last descendant of, I don't know what the name of the dog was.
Like Pish Posh or something, like Vesuvius, Penelope,
As
Pitstop.
something. He is the only one that can unlock the gate. So he unlocks the gate. Dick Dastardly gets reunited with Muttley, which I guess is the sweetest thing, as close as you can get for a villain. He seems happy to see him for at least 2 minutes before
Bashing him on the head.
Yeah. And like we say, it releases Cerberus, and then that leads to an entirely different kind of battle scene of the Blue Falcon needing to kind of find his inner self and not live in his dad's shadow anymore, and suddenly have these huge kind of key moments for characters that get more development in this kind of 3 minutes than they have in the last kind of 73 minutes combined. So I guess JayBee, initially thoughts on this, thoughts on Cerberus, the kind of reunion between Dick Dastardly and Muttley.
So I love Cerberus as a villain, from design, concept, and the backstory, like the lore of Cerberus. My issue is, and it's a big issue, is I view, for all they insist that this movie's theme is friendship, I think a better theme for the movie is actually the love of dogs.
Yeah, like man's best
And
friend sort of thing.
yeah, and all the forms that that takes. Like Dick Dastardly, his motivation is that he loves Muttley. It might be in a bit of a twisted way, but by hook or by crook, he loves Muttley. It is about Shaggy's love for Scooby. They might not always get along, but they love each other. And it's about Blue Falcon learning to love Dynamite. And obviously the whole thing, like Alexander the Great and his dog, like every main character in this has a close relationship with a dog. And I think that that's a really nice message to have in the movie. Like all of them, it's all the union between a person and the dog. So my issue is when we have the villain being a big dog and we get Blue Falcon literally pummeling it in the face towards the end, I'm like, oh, so like what? Like that's a bit of a disconnect. We've got lovely stories about people and their dog, and yet now we're gonna introduce a dog that we're just gonna kind of punch in the face, we're gonna trip over with bowling balls. Just that disconnect for me is a little bit like, I don't know, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But yeah.
Okay, I think I agree with you on most of those points. Sophie, how do you feel?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's really hard because, like I keep saying it, I really wanted to love this movie. I'm kind of like meh about it at this time. I'm just like whatever. Yeah, I like the idea. I like Cerberus. I think he's a good villain. I agree. You know, like the friendship between man and dog, and then like there's a dog villain at the end and whatever. My favorite scene's Fred with his ascot. That's all I've got. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. It was kind of an underwhelming finale for me. I feel like, I mean, the whole thing was kind of, I mean, it was real quick pace, but not an awful lot was going on at the same time. And then it ended at this point, which to me was a little bit underwhelming. And then it was kind of predictable at the end then, but I don't know. I just really wanted to love it, but I just don't.
I love the music. Like when Blue Falcon finally gets the wings and the music kicks in, I love that scene. Like there's lots of little scenes that I love. It's just overall, don't know.
Dan, how do you feel about this part of the movie?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Sophie. Like I wanted to love this film. I didn't hate it, but it was quite underwhelming. I did like you said about the man and dog aspects. I'm a big dog lover, so I did like that part. In terms of like the battle, it just seemed it was there because it's a dramatic film. You have to have this finale. Yeah, I did like Fred with the ascot. That was a cute nod. I know that they've done that quite a few times where if Fred's redesigned, they'll sometimes have a little cheeky scene with the ascot, which I always appreciate. And I do like so during the finale, it sort of whittles down where we lose Fred, we lose Velma, and for a little second we have just Shaggy, Scooby, and Daphne. So I think Daphne pulls like a Scooby snack out for them. And I always thought that was a cute, I don't know if it was intentional, but I thought that was a cute little Easter egg to obviously the 80s when it was just them. So I like that. But yeah, just in general, I felt like the film's like just shouting at me and just, like you said, obviously went through several drafts, and this, I don't know, apparently they decided this was the best sort of finale. So yeah, just I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
To me, what saves this movie and why I possibly look back at it quite fondly is I think we're now coming on to the two big saving graces of what this film has, which is good animation and the voice of Frank Welker. because we now get to the scene where it's this big emotional thing that Shaggy and Scooby love each other more than anything. There is the purest bond in the world between them, and that's how they shut the gate. One would sacrifice themselves for the other one. They would fight over who that one would be, and you get this really nice friendship, this beautiful like ending that I think is entirely saved in the emotion in Scooby's voice, and that it looks well on the screen. But I do think it's quite a nice ending. I do think it's quite emotional. I do think it's quite impactful. And I think it is somewhat of a saving grace to what the movie could have been. But I do think that it's spoilt by the unmasking to be, oh, it's Simon Cowell. Oh, it's not Simon Cowell, because they couldn't have left it as it is Simon Cowell, because that would have been horrific. But like I was saying earlier, it felt almost like Simon Cowell was like, I'll do it, but I want to be unmasked. I want if it wasn't for the meddling kids moment, I want to be that one. I want to be the villain. And it's kind of like, we've forgotten about you. We'd got past you. Don't remind us, like, stay away. So I don't know. I do think that he perhaps tarnishes that moment, but I do think that was the best moment possibly of the movie. And JayBee, I know you like this one.
Yeah, it's so weird because I don't connect with Will Forte's Shaggy at all, but I think the pre-knowledge I went into with the relationship of Shaggy and Scooby, maybe that carries it forward. Obviously, there's Frank Welker, who I kind of don't even think Frank Welker even sounds too much like the Scooby Frank Welker that I necessarily know and love in this. I don't know. That's kind of an unpopular take, maybe. But I do think he speaks too much in this, and a little bit of charm is lost when he actually says stuff like ghost and not roast. I don't know, like, it's good, but it's just, I don't know, it's not what I was looking for. But yeah, the ending scene always makes me tear up. I just think it's quite well acted and framed and portrayed. I think it's a really sweet little scene. But yeah, double unmasking is a bit weird, isn't it?
Dan, how do you feel about this scene?
Yeah, the unmasking is I don't get it. I don't get why Simon had to appear.
No.
I don't get, like, there's no, I think what annoys me most is I remember before I watched a review before I saw the film where someone said, oh, but it's still a Scooby Doo film, there's still a mystery. There is no mystery. I don't understand. Not even the unmasking, really, apart from the fact that the first time the unmasked Simon Cowell is, it's not really a mystery. There's not really a twist. It feels like, I almost imagine originally it ended differently, and then they were like, oh crap, we can't have a Scooby-Doo film and not have an unmasking, because I don't know, for me, I don't know, it feels so random. And Simon Cowell, just no, please. I can't believe, like you say, if this was Warner Brothers' idea, then I lose all hope. This had to be a Simon Cowell stipulation. But again, why is he so powerful that he can demand that? Like, if he was demanding that, I'd say no, just get a different celebrity. We've got, Jason Isaacs and Mark Wahlberg and other A-listers. We'll easily get someone else. I don't know. It sounds to me like the writers thought it would be funny. But yeah, this whole scene, yeah.
No.
No words for it.
And Sophie? I saw the expression before you started speaking.
Like, so much, but I can't be bothered to talk about it at this point. I mean, it's really negative. Anyway, I agree. I think when Frank's a saving grace for me. Like, he is Scooby. He sounds like Scooby. Maybe not as Scooby as he could be, but he is still Scooby. My favourite part is when he starts crying and then Daphne's the first one to run over and give him a big hug when Shaggy goes. I think just the scene of them two hugging, that's like my favourite part. See, I'm not for like a soppy movie though, and I get, like, it's a cinema movie, blah de blah de blah, and like they need to have like a poignant part at the end. So I can understand how and why they've incorporated to be the saving grace. However, it didn't really save it for me as such. Yeah, and the unmasking, I think the fact that Simon Cowell as a mask when they was putting off, that was pretty jarring. Like Dan said, but I can't get on why they'd have asked Simon or any celebrity in the first place to make this cameo, because it wasn't needed. You know what I mean? It's so random. The movie, I was going to say, it's perfect. It's not perfect, but it's fine without a celebrity cameo. You don't need it. And like Dan said, there's no mystery, and it's branded as a Scooby movie, but there is no mystery. If it's branded as a Hanna-Barbera, cinematic universe, okay, accept it and move on. But because it's not, and I go into watching it as a Scooby movie and it doesn't, hit the key points of a Scooby movie, that's where it really falls flat for me. And that's where I watch it and end up thinking, wow, I'm disappointed at the end of it. So I keep saying it's a real shame, because I really wanted to love this movie, but I just don't. And like Dan said, I don't hate it, but it's just not what I wanted.
See, I think the way that I justify it is that Simon Cowell was never actually in this movie. Like, it was Dick Dastardly all along, and he was just trying to get Shaggy and Scooby separated from the gang so he could hopefully get Scooby. And normally we'd just see that be portrayed as a standard nameless character who we're all meant to be shocked when they're unmasked at the end. But just to make it interesting, and it really didn't.
It would have made
They
more
just made that
sense to
character
have
Simon
it be
Cowell.
like that like someone that actually invests in people's businesses versus
But Alan
a
Sugar
talent like Alan Sugar. I'm not gonna say Donald Trump, but like in another universe, it could have been Donald Trump or
Yeah.
anyone from Dragon's Den, not like a talent guy. Like this is Mystery Inc. Not, I don't know. They're not doing quick changes or singing. Like we just needed a business guy.
I will just say that kind of feeds into the idea. I know, going off topic a little bit. Remember the Scooby reunion? They were all like meant to be actors and not actual just random people solve a mystery, which, yeah, that just reminded me of that, and that got my goat. That's annoying.
And then we end this movie with an ending about as jarring as the end of Curse of the Lake Monster. There's some kind of party sequence for reasons kind of beyond me. They still have all these fundamental issues in their relationships, like the fact that the word of some person they'd never met before, they suddenly weren't friends anymore and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna kind of skim this and kind of go to overall verdicts, because it sounds like I've been more negative about this movie than I think I meant to be. But
I didn't like the Mystery Machine. I'm just gonna go out with that. The new Mystery Machine was crap. End of. Yeah, moving on.
Again, pretty jarring. A lot of it was. JayBee, we're starting with you.
I like the ending scene. I thought it was cute where the little vacuum was working there. But the only thing I hated, was that Mystery Machine. I hate all this trope of let's blow up the Mystery Machine and bring in some bull crap Elon Musk Mystery Machine like that one with Bill Nye the Science Guy in. This ridiculous looking, I don't know, it all just looks weird. I would have rather than made it look a bit more like the Falcon Force, because that reminded me in hindsight of the new TARDIS. So I was a bit more like, okay, I'll get on with that. But final verdict. So there's some movies that really do split me, where for one thing I love, there's something that I hate, and I think this is a little bit like that, but I think my thoughts are overall more positive on this. Like if I split them all down, like for everything I love, there's 2 or 3 things that I dislike, which stacked up, does that equate equally to for one thing I love, there's one thing I hate? Maybe. I mean, how many dislikes is a hate? I'm not sure. Any other day, maybe it could flip. But generally speaking, if I'm comparing this to movies and how a lot of people feel about them, I think it's a little bit like X-Men 3 for me. It's definitely the weakest one out of most given lineups. But for me, this is just so rewatchable. Like it's just so I can switch my brain off and just look at things like, oh, that looks visually good. That sounds amazing, like in terms of the music and stuff. And oh, this is gonna keep me busy for a little bit. So I think it's very rewatchable. The stuff I love about it is all of the design choices, the coloring, the lighting. And again, like if we had a standalone Jason Isaacs Dick Dastardly movie, I'm kind of there for it just vocally. because my favorite part about this is Dick Dastardly in terms of just that one nuanced character. So I'm definitely gonna smash this one. Mostly for Dick, if I'm being honest, but there's a lot of other things that I do like. That it's not just all about Dick, but I do like that a lot. Oh, I'm trying to think about more positive things because it seems like I'm just saying lots of stuff and overall being positive about it, but I feel like I've kind of hashed over everything I did like in this review that maybe it wouldn't help for me to just list them all off at the end. But
I think
yeah.
kind of what I have to say about it is, for all we've sat here and listed a lot of negatives, I know at least for JB and I, we have reviewed every single movie. We've been there with Mystery Map. We've been there with Kiss a Rock and Roll Movie. And then we're seeing this one and we're like, do you know what? This isn't half bad. Like, it's not necessarily everything that this thing did right.
And I also love the end credits.
But it's also seeing how far it's come from some of the other things that we've seen. And I'd say, like JB said, kind of the key word for me is just rewatchable. I can just relax, have this on in the background, and it's not going to offend me. Whereas, like, there's movies that we've reviewed that I can't bring myself to watch again. Return to Zombie Island, one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's not, it just isn't, there isn't a reason I have to put it in that category. So
this movie's a takeaway. It's a takeaway. Like, you know in your mind it would be healthier for you to cook or even to have a ready meal.
And you
but
can
it's
enjoy something that
easier.
you've cooked more.
It's so much easier to
easy.
get the takeaway, but it's more expensive, and you're left with that feeling afterwards like, crap, did I really need that?
But it's got some level of comfort that having a takeaway.
Like, look at me, I'm not an anti-takeaway person.
So
You don't get like this by being anti-takeaway, which is why this is ultimately a smash for me.
So I'm gonna have to agree with JB. This one's a smash for me as well. Dan, what about you?
Yeah, look, I know I've been really negative, but I think that's because I was more disappointed at certain parts. You know, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. But because I think there was so much more potential. Like, I do love a lot of this movie. I love the opening with the kids. I love the animation. You know, I did love the feel of it. Like you say, it does feel very comforting. There's some really cute scenes. There is some great voice acting. It's just so annoying that I could say that there is a great film here. Like, if they had, I don't know, maybe there was like a draft, like you say, it went through numerous rewrites. I bet if you combined a lot of them, they would have made a great solid film. Um, but yeah, it was a good film. I know it sounds like, oh, I've hated this film, but I did enjoy it. I remember watching it for the first time on my birthday in lockdown, and I really, you know, I had fun watching it. Like I said, at the time I thought, well, it wasn't great, but I wasn't angry. I did enjoy it. So, and I think, you know, it is, you know, a CGI Scooby movie. The gang look great. I think every Scooby fan should watch it just for that sake. So surprisingly, I can't pass the film. I'm going to give it a smash. I don't, you know, I don't love it, but I don't hate it enough to say pass. So yeah, it gets a light smash from me.
Hey, and Sophie?
Yeah, I think I agree with what you've all said. I think, yeah, it's not that I hate it, I'm just disappointed with the final outcome. I think I hold on to what the purpose of the film could have been. You know, it was to revamp Scooby the franchise, you know, make it more up to date and modern. And the idea, and like when you say Scoob, I think what it could have been, but we've got this now. And I think for me, the saving grace is the art. I love the CGI, I love the style of the colouring, like that is beautiful. But, you know, the story's not there for me. However, I will put it on in the background. I like the idea that it is different from what we've got before. You know, it is more like a cinematic piece, and it's definitely unique for the franchise. You know, it's not the best thing in the world, but I think, like Dan said, you know, if a Scooby fan, you'll enjoy it. You know, you take it for what it is, and especially if you like all the other Hanna-Barbera franchises joining it. Yes, it's kind of like a weird concept, mashup, crossover, whatever, but at the end of the day, it's not the worst movie in the world. And I think what it achieves, and you know, just the animation and the style alone and the beautiful colours, I mean, like Joe said, the music, I think I am going to smash it. but I am a bit apprehensive because it's not a Scooby movie. It's there for a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, and if you're there for that, go for it. If you're more, I'm a Scooby Doo purist, you're not going to like this movie. But for me personally, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to smash it.
Okay, so this movie did get a unanimous smash again. And I guess, as JayBee promised at the start of this episode, there is an interview announcement for this week. So, as part of a series of December specials, reuniting people that have worked on Scooby projects, both past, present, and who knows, hopefully we'll see some of them again together in the future. This week, we will not only be celebrating the movie that was Scoob, but also what could have been and the work that was achieved thus far with Holiday Haunt. So we will be interviewing Michael Korinsky and Bill Haller.
Yeah, the directors of Scoob Holiday Haunt. So that is such a crazy interview. Really long one. I think it clocks in at about an hour, 40 minutes. So that's a juggernaut of one. But it is, I mean, we've spoken about Scoob a lot here. It is actually pretty much 1 hour 20 of Holiday Haunt and 20 minutes of Scoob. It goes really deep. I think it's, as you can understand, almost emotional interview yet. But there's also a lot of things to potentially be excited for, including a bit of a never before seen preview of Holiday Haunt. So you definitely don't want to miss that one. That premiere should be, ready to go on now in terms of getting the notification bell sorted out. So yeah, I'll leave that link to the description down below. You definitely do not want to miss that. So to get in the process of wrapping things up, Dan, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at danfaz94.
And Sophie?
Yeah, you can find me Scooby Doo for Life on Instagram.
That is amazing. So I'll leave that in the description down below. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.